Here's the agenda, but let me just quickly start off by sharing with you a little bit about myself, about my background. I started out in the pharmaceutical industry as a pharmaceutical sales rep. This was back in 2000, I think 2002. Eventually, I landed in the corporate offices at Eli Lilly, where I worked on the market access team and actually eventually led that team. And we were charged with negotiating with PBMs to get our products onto the PBMs formulary. I left Eli Lilly, started my own mail order pharmacy, became frustrated with that environment, uh, low reimbursements coming back from PBMs, tough business, the pharmacy business for independents, low reimbursements coming back from PBMs, and then kind of being strong armed by wholesalers and generic drug manufacturers. So decided, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. And so I decided to start a fiduciary model PBM. We'll talk a little bit about what that is and the implications here in a bit. If you have any questions, comments, you agree, you disagree, don't hesitate. Let's have a conversation. Send the question via chat. There are two ways that we can talk today. You can send the question via chat, or if you prefer to have the floor, you may use the raised hand features that is on the control panel. And then at that point, I will unmute you and then give you the floor. And let's have some dialogue back and forth. By the end of these next 35 minutes or so, here's the goal. I want you to know how PBMs make money beyond just the functional role that most participants in the supply chain are keenly aware of. I want you to feel something other than indifference, because if you don't feel anything, then you're not going to take any actions. And so here's the action. This is the intent of the webinar, right? When I ask a question to a potential client, what's your most pressing problem around the pharmacy benefit? Inevitably, 8, 9 times out of 10, that problem is going to revolve around pricing or a lack of transparency. It's no accident. And so PBMs intentionally make it difficult to ascertain not just the cost of drugs, but as important, what are they taking home? And so the key here and the message today is, it's not necessarily about bigger rebates. It isn't necessarily about bigger discounts off of AWP. You'll see why here in a bit. It's about eliminating information asymmetry. Information asymmetry is simply this. It's an economic and contractual theoretical term that says this, or phrase that says this. It simply means that when one party has access to information that another party doesn't have access to, the party with the information is going to use it to its advantage. And that's what non-fiduciary PBMs have been doing now for almost 2 decades. On your screen is an example of information success, right? Information asymmetry is information failure. This is an example of information success. So here's what I want you to do. If you believe that your clients or your company is getting a transparent arrangement from your incumbent PBM, and you don't receive, or your client doesn't receive, a rebate remittance report every quarter from either the rebate aggregator or the PBM itself, then throw that logic out the window. If you believe your arrangement, your contract with your incumbent PBM or maybe a PBM you may be working towards entering into an agreement with, to be transparent and or pass through. And yet there is no rebate remittance report involved in that relationship, then throw that transparency, the idea of transparency, out the window. A rebate remittance report details every drug that was eligible for a rebate at the claim level. And when I say claim level, I'm referring to the claim number. I'm referring to the NDC. I'm referring to the date. And most important, I am referring to what did the manufacturer pay the PBM or the rebate aggregator for that claim that was eligible to receive a rebate. There's a reason non-fiduciary PBMs don't want their clients to have access to this level of information, this level of detail, because it makes it difficult to calculate how much money they're making. We're going to talk about that here in a second. So here's the status quo, and I'm diving right in here. No shucking and jiving today. Plan sponsors typically enter into an arrangement with a non-fiduciary PBM that calls for an artificially too low admin fee. Artificially too low, I'm suggesting that anything below $4 per paid claim is artificially too low. And so when that happens, then it essentially gives the PBM the green light to augment that artificially too low admin fee through undisclosed or hidden cash flows. And it's not just on the pharmacy benefit side. Now, you'll see arrangements where some clients are giving up all of their rebates in exchange for an admin fee credit on their medical. So forego all of your rebates and we'll give you a credit on your administrative fee on your medical. It's the same thing. In fact, that scenario is can be less transparent. So this is a second source which basically here agrees with this initial source here. It reinforces the status quo. And so I can remember when I started out in the industry, it was the small molecule brand drug rebates which were driving the revenue for PBMs. And then you got smart and you closed off that undisclosed source of revenue. You got smart. What did PBMs do? Remember mandatory mail? Remember mandatory mail? Independent pharmacies were up in arms. And then you got smart. You closed that source of revenue. The PBMs did it again. They shifted costs somewhere else. Specialty drug rebates. Now you're catching up to the PBMs again. They've already shifted that cost somewhere else. They've shifted that cost to what's called MBDCs, medical benefit drug claims. That's part of the reason you're seeing so much consolidation. It's the wild, wild west on the medical side right now for prescription drugs in terms of no transparency and a bunch of opacity. And so it may sound like I'm bashing PBMs. I'm not. That's not what I'm doing here. What I'm simply trying to do is distinguish between a fiduciary model, PBM. And so for the record, here's my position. There's only two types of PBMs. You've got nomenclature out there. You've got traditional model. You've got pass through. You've got transparent. My position, there's only two types. Either you're fiduciary and you're contractually obligated to put clients first, or you're not. And when you're fiduciary, generally it's a good value and there's no other cash flows to the PBM other than the administrative fee. Non-fiduciary PBMs, on the other hand, as soon as the ink is dry on the contract, are looking for ways to generate revenue outside of the administrative fee. That fee is static. They're looking for variable costs. And so let's understand the business model here really quickly. I'm going to, and I see a few questions coming in. We're going to have a break in the action and I'll be able to get to those. Let's start with the business model. I want to make sure you have at least a basic understanding of the PBM business model. And so starting with the contractual relationship, as a PBM, we contract with pharmacies in order to have sites from which prescriptions can be dispensed to our plan participants. And then obviously that's one of the services. Then we've got to have clients in order to provide those services to. Those clients or customers are third-party payers and health plans, self-funded employers, coalitions, unions, municipalities. Those are our clients. Now, when one of those pharmacies dispenses a medication to one of our plan participants, we reimburse that pharmacy for that drug that was dispensed plus a dispensing fee. So that reimbursement for the drug cost plus a dispensing fee is how you get to your ingredient costs. And then we reimburse and then we bill our clients for those dispensed prescriptions. This is when information asymmetry begins, starting with the formulary rebates or the rebates. And so if you believe the source or you believe the information on those two slides that I shared with you about the percentage of which bucket holds the largest percentage share of a PBM of the PBM's revenue, it was revenue from the manufacturer, or in other words, rebates. And so the inflow of cash back from the manufacturer to, and so there's three problems here with this business model. There's three problems here from a plan sponsor's perspective, from the buyer's perspective. The first one is the inflow of cash back to you, back to your clients with the intent of lowering net costs is too low. If 50% of a PBM's profit comes from the manufacturer, what they're doing is negotiating aggressive discounts in the form of rebates, but not passing it all back to you or your clients. That increases your cost. That's the first problem. The second problem, the reimbursement or the payment from the third-party payer back to the PBM for the drugs that were dispensed by pharmacies in our network is too high. It's too high. Now, before I get to the reason why it's too high, what allows it to be too high, what drives overpayments from third-party payers, before I get to that, let me touch on the third problem. And I see it every single day. Very, very smart people who have been running PBM RFPs 5, 10, 15 years, dabbling in pharmacy benefits. Dabbling in pharmacy benefits because you have other bigger priorities and requirements on you in the businesses in which you work. Now, I get this is a part of it, but for most of you, it isn't the most important part. And so the third reason is, look who sits atop this entire system here. The money is flowing down from the entities that buy PBM services, funding every one of these organizations, yet know the least about how it functions. I've been saying this now for a decade. And every time I say it, I get chills. The organizations, the people who sit at the height of this entire reimbursement distribution system, who finances the entire system, knows the least about how it works. That is why information asymmetry is so important to non-fiduciary PBMs. The more you know, the less you overpay. And so that second problem that I touched on, the bills that plans that third-party payers receive from PBMs, and in which they pay PBMs for the drugs that were dispensed by our network pharmacies. The reason why you or your clients pay too much is referred to as a spread. So I want to be clear here what a spread is. A spread is when you look at this particular system here. A spread is not a billing error. A spread is intentional. A spread is intentional. If as a PBM, I reimburse a pharmacy here $5 and then bill this plan sponsor here 10, that difference is $5. That is a spread. I'm going to drive this home here. I'm going to give you a visual here in a second on this. But the two most heavily used pricing benchmarks for generic drugs, and we're keying in on generics because spreads most often take place with generic drugs for obvious reasons, right? 90% of all the drugs that are dispensed are generics. And then because there are multiple manufacturers of generics, you just have more opportunity for spread pricing, spread taking as a PBM. And so the two most common benchmarks are AWP, which is an artificially inflated price that no one pays. You're going to get a kick out of some of these AWPs. And then MAC, which is more closely related to the actual acquisition cost, the AAC, than AWP is, but it too is higher than the price that pharmacies pay to put the product into inventory. So this is something that I post on my blog.transparentrx, every Thursday, or most Thursdays, I should say. But take a look here at levothyroxine. Take a look at the AWP for levothyroxine. Let's call it 560 bucks. The AWP is the list price. Remember, it's a sticker price. It doesn't reflect any actual prices paid. It doesn't reflect the actual selling price. It's just a list price. It's a sticker price. The sticker price for this particular drug product is $560. And so third-party payers and even health plans, even state governments are negotiating discounts off of AWP with no assurances of radical transparency. Let's get beyond the talk of just transparency. Every PBM says that they're transparent. Are you kidding me? No PBM is going to say that they're not. So let's get beyond just the talk of transparency. We're talking about radical transparency. So you negotiate an 80%, let's call it 85% off of discount, off of the average wholesale price. And you believe that to be a great deal because you are keying in on 85% with no understanding of what the list price is to begin with. To make matters even worse, some PBMs are reluctant to share this data with their clients, their own claims data. With pricing details in it, with cost information in it, right? So AWP 560, you negotiate an 80, and that's high for most of you. Come on now. I'm talking an effective discount off of AWP for generics of 85%, taking out all the fat, right? 85% is high for retail. And so 85% discount off of 560 would be, and I'm rounding down, I'm rounding to the nearest whole number here. So let's call that discount 475 bucks. That means that the bill the third party payer would receive from the PBM is 85 bucks. Now, I want you to take a look at what this drug costs to put on the shelf. And so let me be clear here. The AWP is not 117 for levothyroxine. The AWP is 561. Not that one, that one. Right? So 560 minus 475 leaves 85 bucks. And I'm writing with a mouse here, so bear with me. It's 85 bucks the bill the plan sponsor receives. The cost to put the product on the shelf was $4. Now, let's say that this product is on the MAC list. Let's say that this product is on the MAC list. More about MAC lists in a second. Let's say that the MAC price for this product, let's call it $9. The out-of-pocket cost from the PBM doesn't really change, right? So let's say that the markup on the drug, let's call it 50% markup. Most independent pharmacies would take that all day. They would take that all day. Let's call the markup 50%. So here, the PBM pays $6 out of pocket, the $4 cost plus a 50% markup. There's a potential $79 spread here. If it was the MAC price, the out-of-pocket for the PBM doesn't change, $3 spread. Well, you might think $3. That's nothing. What do I care about $3? Stick around for a second. Okay, so all right, so the state of Ohio, and this was just maybe 2 years ago. The state of Ohio, as I mentioned earlier, decided that they were no longer going to focus in on discounts off of AWP, uh, bigger minimum rebate guarantees than the previous contractual term. What they decided they were going to do was key in on how much money the PBM was making. That became their number one metric. Now, just think about this for a second. As a PBM, we go to manufacturers, we go to pharmacies, chain pharmacies, and PSAOs, and we negotiate. And then we enter into deals with them. Those deals are done. They don't change until the contracts come up for renewal. It doesn't matter what Acme Inc. feels about their deal, or we risk losing their business because we can't give them more what they want. We can only give what we negotiate. And so when you sit down with a PBM, what you're actually negotiating for is what percent of the negotiated savings that they've driven you're going to allow us to keep. That, at the end of the day, that's what this is about. And so the more opaque, the less information the PBM gives to you, the more it gets to keep in terms of revenue, thereby increasing its clients' cost. The less we keep, the less you pay. The more we keep, the more you pay. That's how it works. Money's not just falling out of the sky. There is a price to pay when the arrangement you enter into with a PBM is less than radically transparent. The state of Ohio uncovered $250 million just in spreads in 1 year. They had never, up until 2018, thought to look at how much money the PBM was making. If these PBMs make 123.7 instead of 223.7, the state of Ohio pays $100 million less for its pharmacy benefit. It all starts with the contract. And it's extremely nuanced. I talked about MAC list. Some PBMs have multiple MAC lists. Your client's MAC list will be less comprehensive and less aggressive. That means it will have less drugs on there and the prices aren't as aggressive, meaning lower. The pharmacies, however, are extremely aggressive. That's part of the reason we have this new regulation now where states are going to be able to regulate PBMs. Much of that was driven by the National Community Pharmacists Association, because the independent pharmacies MAC lists and reimbursements, you couldn't keep the lights on. If you were an independent, it was tough. You had to make money somewhere else within your store. And so the pharmacies are being reimbursed less. The employers are being billed more because their MAC lists are different. Did you know that? I've sat at the table. I've done this personally. It goes back 15 years. While most third-party payers are keyed in on, formulary rebates, some are getting smarter now, and you want the price protection rebates in there. Some are even smarter than that, where now you want the administrative fees there. Those administrative fees are different than the administrative fees for claims adjudication. These administrative fees are different than the administrative fees I talked about up front, where it's a per claim or a PEPM or whatever the benchmark is for the claims adjudication services, the member web portal. That fee is different than this fee, but it can be easily confused by purchasers of PBM services. When you see in the contract, client is entitled to formulary rebates, but not entitled to administrative fees. These fees can amount to more than the formulary rebates. It depends on how the PBM has entered into that agreement with the manufacturer. And the intent is information asymmetry. Dirty Laundry was aired. This again was about 3 years ago. Express Scripts sued a drug manufacturer because the drug manufacturer refused to pay rebates. Back to Express Scripts. Express Scripts was confident enough; they didn't care that the lawsuit was going to be made public. It sued anyway. And what you will see here is that the formulary rebates, and this is public information, you can go out on the internet and find it yourself. The formulary rebates are dwarfed by the administrative fees. These are manufacturer administrative fees. All they are rebates that have been renamed with the intent of the PBM not being contractually obligated to pass it through onto all of its clients. When you don't address administrative fees in your contract as they pertain to quote unquote rebates, guess what? The PBM is keeping it. Remember the reimbursement distributions slide that I shared with you, how I talked about the inflow of cash in the form of rebates, formulary rebates are too low? It's because most plan sponsors, they're getting the bulk of the formulary rebates, right? But as you can see here, that could be a small piece of the pie. Here's another slide. So you got 3 different types of rebates. And let me be clear, all of which you or your client is entitled to. Remember, as a PBM, we negotiate with manufacturers. We negotiate with chain pharmacies. We negotiate with pharmacy services administrative organizations. Those deals are done. When the PBM is non-fiduciary, it essentially is engaging in self-dealing. It is essentially negotiating also for itself when it should be negotiating purely for you. And so when it does that, engages in self-dealing and keeps a part of negotiated savings, your costs go up. Remember, it's static. When you sit down with a PBM, you are fighting and negotiating for what you are going to allow it to keep. It is a change in mindset. Outcomes rebates. You see this in the fine print in PBM contracts. If if it is a source of revenue, and so I mean, come on, follow me here. Please follow me here. So let's say you address formulary rebates. Let's say you address price protection rebates. Let's say you address manufacturer administrative fees. Let's say you address product discounts, but you miss outcomes rebates. All it takes is to miss just one. These sort of deals, and what these are rebates. Again, purchasers of PBM services, employers, health plans, unions, cities, public schools, whatever. You're entitled to this too. Every penny that a manufacturer pays a PBM, aside from maybe data, should be going back to the plan sponsor. So when you hear value-based drug deals, these are the type of deals that are being negotiated, and what they are rebates. So when a drug misses its goal, then that manufacturer reimburses or pays a rebate to the PBM. It could be a percent of the original cost. It could be 50%. It could be 100. And so 5 minutes and I'm wrapping up. But the most important piece is coming up. Like the state of Ohio here, the intent of this webinar is anyone willing to listen. Start in your evaluations of either PBM proposals or their performance, evaluating how much money they are making. How much are they making specific to each group, each client? And what I can promise you is that if a third party payer is overpaying, it is because the language in the contract led them to believe that the deal was more transparent than it actually was. And so the significance of that is that the PBM's take home, what it keeps in its bank account after drugs are paid for, after a share of the rebates are passed back to the client, it is hidden here. I, I mean, you gotta give them credit. The way the system is set up, it is set up so information asymmetry thrives. And so the key for you is to eliminate information asymmetry. Case in point, I've provided now at least 4 or 5 insights. Here's another one, and I'm wrapping up here. This too is available on the web. In fact, I've been sharing this now for about 2 or 3 years, and at one point CVS had taken it off their website. But you got to see this. The CEO of CVS said, and I quote, "We underwrite contracts to overall level of profitability and many levers available to pull depending on the preferences of the client." So if you've seen a CVS proposal, and more times than not, they blow everyone out on paper. Rebates are higher. I mean, it just until the plan goes live. Give me a second here. Give me a second here. In layman's terms, here is what this means. We are going to make as much money as we possibly can. The amount of money that we generate is ultimately going to depend upon how sophisticated or unsophisticated our clients might be. And that's what they're relying on. It says it right there. It says it right there. The profitability that he was alluding to was their management fee. After the pharmacies are reimbursed, and I'm trying to get back here. After the pharmacies are reimbursed, as you can see here, and after we receive ingredient costs from our clients and rebates in from manufacturers, as you see here, whatever is left over is the PBM's management fee. That's what the state of Ohio pivoted to. Everything in green at some point lands in the PBM's bank account. Now, I know ingredient costs, I said earlier, ingredient costs is, the drug cost plus the dispensing fee, but I'm pulling out dispensing fees for illustration purposes here because I don't want anyone to forget it. Everything in green lands in the PBM's bank account. In red are those dollars that leave the PBM's bank account. Reimbursement to a pharmacy in the PBM's network for a drug it dispensed to a plan participant. A share of manufacturer revenue, in other words, rebates that the PBM passes back. But then there's also buckets in which it doesn't pass back. Whatever is left over is the earnings after cash disbursements, or a fancy way of saying the PBM's management fee. It is that fee which plays a big role in the plan's final cost. The new path says this: let's eliminate the self-dealing. The PBM goes to the manufacturer, the PBM goes to the pharmacy networks, negotiates hard for that, and in exchange, you pay it a flat, radically transparent fee. That's how you get drug costs down. There's no need to go to Canada. There's no need to go to Canada. You don't believe me? In 1 year, in 1 year, 60% cut in their final plan cost. And so I talked about the earnings after cash disbursements. I talked about the PBM's management fee. When you look at this slide, the incumbent PBM at a minimum, there's no question, Prime, Optum, Express Scripts, you name them, they get better deals than Transparent RX does because of their size. But it is not such a huge gap that we can't make up for it and then deliver lower costs because we're radically transparent. When you look at this slide, I talked about it. The CEO of CVS just told you many levers available to pull depending upon the preferences of our clients. I am often asked, Tyrone, what's the difference between a fiduciary model PBM and a transparent one or a pass-through one? Here's the difference. The difference is what happens after the plan goes live. Is the PBM looking to drive revenue for itself, as the CEO of CVS just said? Or is the PBM looking to continue to drive costs down for its clients? Not because it wants to necessarily, because it is contractually obligated to. The difference here of essentially $35 per member per month. This is or was Prime's EACD. Prime, if you believe that their deals are better than ours, in which they are, but I'm just saying it's equal. So at a minimum, their costs should have been equal to ours, but it was $35 PMPM higher than ours, which means that was their management fee. Are you kidding me? The management fee was higher than what the freaking drugs cost, all in. We got to stop this. We got to stop this. And you do it through education. You do it through education. Brian, one of the better dudes I've met in this business, one of the smartest dudes I've met in this business, had gone through the course before giving, or before us winning, not giving, we won, before winning this client. And he still didn't believe it was possible what we did. He still didn't believe it, even after all of that. And it is possible through education. So I'm going to wrap up here on this piece. This is a program that we offer through the Pharmacy Benefit Institute of America. Some of you are here because of it. And so I thank you for that. But as the CEO of CVS said, many levers available to pull and the preferences of our clients, that's based on how educated you are in the PBM industry. it never fails. I have to take my automobile into the repair shop. I know nothing about cars. I walk in, chest out, head high. The only chance I got two chances. Either I'm dealing with an honest and fair auto repairman, or they believe that with my chest out, my head high, and because I've done a few Google searches, I know what I'm talking about. I got no clue. The car repairman offers me services. Some of them I need, some of them I don't. And I just say no to certain things and bang my fist on the desk. And I probably decline things that I should and accept things that I shouldn't. It's the same thing that many of you are doing when you get on the phone or get on a Zoom meeting or talk face to face with PBMs. You've been doing it for 15 years, 20 years. Chest high, head high, chest out. You sat in on a few webinars. You've been doing RFPs for 15 years. But the PBMs know, like blood in the water for sharks. They know how sophisticated or unsophisticated you are around it. So I don't overpay for car repair services because I take someone in with me who can build an engine from the ground up. Because they're educated about car repair and I'm not. I'm educated about PBM services and I want you to be too. That's all the time I got today. There will be a recording. You'll get an email in the morning with a link to that recording. I hope you've taken one or two things away today where you can start the process of becoming more educated around this business because you've seen what the potential can be. It doesn't have to cost as much as it costs, but to get it down, it starts with education. That is my time. I've got a few questions I think coming in here. Lucy says accounting in Utah was saving money by paying employees to fly to Mexico to get their medications. I mean, come on, we got to stop this. I mean, we have to stop this. Either you get educated about it and you can get costs down here in our own country, or if you can't, then you got to go international. All right.